What you are not being told about the wildfires in Maui. There is a coordinated effort to destroy the island of Maui using directed energy weapons to build a World Economic Forum smart city in its place that is governed completely by artificial intelligence. One thing I can say for sure is that you are not being told the truth about what is happening there. There are a massive number of inconsistencies, red flags, and things that just make no sense at all. Oh, we're going to be digging into this one. Hey guys, JDR Exospace here. So before we get into the topic of this video, I just want to quickly plug the link down in the description below. If you want to help the people in Maui recovering from this wildfire, just go ahead, send a few dollars in that relief fund so we can help these people get back on track. All right, so there's a conspiracy theory going around the internet that the wildfires in Maui were actually caused by directed energy weapons and a World Economic Forum ploy to turn Maui into a basically sustainable city. And with any good conspiracy theory, there are some elements of truth to this theory, but there's also some really basic facts that they just get wrong, and that kind of leads them down this rabbit hole of kind of misdirection. So I thought for this video, we'd actually break down some of the truths in this conspiracy theory and then get into where they got some basic facts wrong. So it's hard to say all the time where these conspiracy theories originated, but when this first came to my attention, it was actually from this guy, the Patriot Voice, who I've never heard of, but it popped up on my Twitter thread. And he was making some pretty wild claims here, actually, that the World Economic Forum destroyed the island of Maui with a directed energy weapon in an attempt to build this smart city. I just wanted to address real quick each of those individual claims because there are some truth to some of those claims, but there are some really basic facts that he just completely gets wrong here. So the first claim, that there are directed energy weapons. Now, directed energy weapons are a real thing. You can actually go to the US Government Accountability Office and you can read about directed energy weapons to your heart's content. And high energy lasers are essentially concentrating that beam so that it becomes weaponized. And the ones that they're kind of talking about on the internet are these ones right here at this escalation of force at the end of this scale, where it's concentrating the beam with its ability to destroy. And they talk about it here, opportunities and challenges. It's a complement to conventional weapons, ease of graduated response, and research and development, but it also has some challenges. There are some technological limitations. DEWs are generally less effective the farther they are from the target. Atmospheric conditions and cooling requirements can limit their effectiveness. Has battlefield uses as well, and it even addresses the ethical and health concerns. And you could actually go on Lockheed Martin's website and you could read about one of the systems they've developed called Helios. And Helios is a high energy laser with integrated optical dazzler and surveillance. And this was developed in conjunction with the US Navy. They have this on board battleships right now. And even on the Lockheed Martin website, they describe what this system does. Scalable laser design architecture spectrally combines multiple kilowatt fiber lasers to attain high beam quality at various power levels. Together with our exceptional Navy industry partnership, we are leveraging industry-leading laser technology and decades of ship integration and combat system integration expertise. Now, directed energy weapons are real, and the thing is, if we're reading about it on Lockheed Martin's website, and US Government Accountability Office is talking about it, these things have been around for a while. These things aren't exactly a secret. The US military's had them probably for decades, but at least several years. And everybody already knows about them. So it's not really that much of a conspiracy theory or even a secret. And the second part about this story, that the World Economic Forum has plans for Hawaii to be the sustainable paradise, that's also true. You can go to the World Economic Forum's website right now and you can read about their plans for Hawaii to be the first US state to run entirely on clean energy. 65 renewable projects planned for the next 20 years to power 300,000 Hawaiian homes. Solar panels. Not exactly a secret either. Now, the World Economic Forum definitely has a reputation as the internet's boogeyman, and very deservedly so. They've said some very kind of Darth Vader, evil empire type stuff. Now, essentially, the World Economic Forum, in a nutshell, wants to pretty much own everything that you consume and then rent it back to you, and then also simultaneously convince you that not owning it yourself is actually beneficial to you. And there's definitely a sector of the internet that whenever they hear World Economic Forum, WEF, it immediately opens up all these possibilities about plots and conspiracies and world takeovers and things like that. But on this one, there's actually not that much that's dark or conspiratorial about it. If you just look at Hawaii on a map, Hawaii is this volcanic island chain in the middle of the ocean, the middle of the Pacific Ocean, way out here, thousands of miles away from any other, mainland. The closest major US port to Hawaii in the US is Los Angeles, and that is a 12-hour flight, almost 13-hour flight. It's not close to anything where they can get resources. So if you really think about it, they currently have about 20% of their energy that is derived from sustainables. All of their energy needs are met by importing fossil fuels at this point. So it's really not that crazy of a conspiracy theory to think that they might want to get away from their dependence on imports and actually be able to support their own population with sustainable energy. not that crazy of a conspiracy theory, although it is true. And a third part of the conspiracy theory is that there are real estate developers that are rushing into Maui and gobbling up real estate and trying to essentially prey on all these vulnerable people that have just had their entire lives destroyed. And unfortunately, I'm sorry to say that part is also true.
Real estate developers are apparently circling destroyed homes like vultures looking to scoop up properties and prized land. About 86% of the more than 2,000 structures that have been destroyed or damaged are residential. Now, a week after losing their homes, and in some cases their loved ones, victims say real estate investors are trying to cash in, contacting them, attempting to buy their land.
People are right now traumatized. Please don't approach them with an offer to buy land. Please don't approach their families to tell them that they're going to be better off if they make a deal, because we're not going to allow it, and it's going to be a very significant amount of time anyway in the recovery before building could be done. So don't make the mistake of testing us in that space, please.
Unfortunately, some people are just really shitty. And yeah, even though unfortunately that story is true, you don't really need a conspiracy theory to explain it. Real estate developers are notoriously merciless and ruthless. And it's really not all that surprising if you know anybody in the real estate business that there are some unscrupulous people that would sweep in at what they would view as a buying opportunity right now when real estate prices are low, and they can redevelop all of this at a later date to make a huge profit by preying on these vulnerable people. That practice isn't exactly unheard of in the real estate developer community. So really, you don't need a conspiracy theory to explain that. All you have to do to explain that is that there are some people that are just not great people. And like any good conspiracy theory, these things that I've just discussed are based in truth. And so where the mistakes start happening is where you take these things that are based in truth and you start connecting a bunch of dots between things that aren't really that connected, and then you miss some really basic facts that would provide an alternate explanation to your story that would actually make a lot more sense. And the first basic fact that this conspiracy theory kind of misses is that Maui was actually in a state of historic drought. Right before these wildfires broke out, they were actually in a period of what's called a flash drought. And flash droughts are so dry and hot that the air literally sucks moisture out of the ground and plants in a vicious cycle of hotter and drier that often leads to wildfires. Hawaii's situation was a textbook case. On May 23rd, none of Maui was unusually dry. By the following week, it was more than half abnormally dry. By June 13th, it was 2/3 either abnormally dry or in moderate drought. And this week, at the time of this article, which was a couple weeks ago, about 83% of the island is either abnormally dry or in moderate or severe drought. Currently, where I record this video in Texas, there's a red flag warning, so we're under extreme drought conditions right now. Wildfire warnings everywhere. We've actually had some small localized wildfires, and we have watering restrictions. So these aren't uncommon conditions for wildfires. Everything's hot, dry. It only takes one initial spark from an electrical surge or somebody throwing a cigarette out to spark a wildfire that just takes over the place. And this theory also ignores some pretty basic fire science. One of the things they pointed out on this Twitter thread is that there were some buildings that were remained unburned while all these trees and everything else around it was burned. But that's not all that crazy if you understand even basic fire science. So I found this article called The Guide to Wildland Fire Origin and Cause Determination, produced by the National Wildfire Coordinating Group. And fire science is actually a pretty well understood science, but the one thing that every firefighter knows is that fire is very unpredictable. It can change with the winds, topography, very unpredictable. But one of the things I found very interesting in this article is they're actually showing some of the fire patterns following these wildfires, and you can see even in these where they're pointing out this is where the ignition area was and this is where it followed this kind of burn pattern, there are still some spots in here where it just completely missed these trees. So that little piece of evidence in and of itself that the fire just skipped around some things, that's not really proof of anything. That's just how wildfires behave. And if you look at some of the images of these wildfires, if you're just focusing on this kind of granular look at it and focusing on this one small area where some trees were missed, yeah, there are some images here. This was the red Lahaina house that's now become kind of famous, where literally everything around it was burned except this one house is just still in this perfectly pristine condition. But if you zoom out a little bit and you actually look at these neighborhoods, look at some of these images. This whole part of this island, this is that red Lahaina house again, everything around it completely destroyed. All of this completely destroyed. It looks like a nuclear bomb went off here. If you look at this one in LA Times, this one completely wiped out the island, but you still see some buildings around here. Some of them are still okay, but everything else around it is burned. That's not necessarily indicative of directed energy weapons. It's just how wildfires behave. If the wildfire was moving and then for some reason, like you can see in this photo, there's just a large parking lot around it, and that fire just didn't catch this building because there was no fuel in between these other fires and this building, maybe just didn't catch on fire. That's not a conspiracy theory. And then lastly, the idea of these directed energy weapons actually causing these wildfires. So I was actually going to make on part of my video where I showed the sources of all of these different videos of these directed energy weapons supposedly beaming down and starting these wildfires. But this news channel actually beat me to it. So here's a clip of that where they're proving that all of these videos, supposedly directed energy weapons, actually aren't what they claim to be.
Using a reverse image search, Verify traced this picture back to a January 2018 Facebook post from the Canton Repository, a local Ohio news outlet claiming to show footage of a controlled burn at a refinery in Ohio. We traced this image back to posts from SpaceX in May of 2018. According to SpaceX, the images show a time-lapse photo of a SpaceX rocket launch in California. And finally, Verify traced this image back to a viral TikTok video from May 25th, 2023. According to the original description, the video was taken in Chile. A Chilean news outlet shared the footage, saying it shows a transformer explosion.
And then lastly, this is part of the reason why you don't want to just always dive into rabbit holes necessarily before you have all the evidence. There's a video out there that may be the cause of this wildfire. I mean, we may never know the actual cause of the wildfire because it's really hard to ascertain. You kind of try to trace it back to the source and see if you can find some evidence of that ignition source. But there's a video out there that they think that it may have just been caused by an electrical surge, and they caught it on video, so here that is.
Another video from August 7th capturing what could be an early trigger to the deadly fire.
It's windy and then there's a flash, and I think that's when a tree's falling on a power line.
Sorry about that, my little light died back here. I had to get that replaced. It's a critical part of the story. But anyway, I'm not trying to use this video as an opportunity to call anybody out specifically or by name or to dunk on anybody. That's not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video really is to kind of call attention to how certain conspiracy theories are made and how they're usually, the good ones at least, are usually wrapped around these little nuggets of truth, and then people are just connecting dots in ways that aren't really adding up, and then going down this rabbit hole where they end up in a place where if they had just paid more attention to some basic facts, they wouldn't have been led so astray. So while I do think it's important to remain skeptical of maybe some of the stories that are put out by the mainstream media so that you're not just believing everything you hear, I also think it's important to maybe just slow down a little bit when you're talking about some of these conspiracy theories and realize that especially in events like this is a time where there's a lot of people that are really suffering, and these conspiracy theories really don't help that much, and they're really just putting more pain on people who already have enough to deal with. Speaking of which, before I end this video, I want to just point out your attention to that link again below. Please donate to the Wildfire Relief Fund so that we can help these people get back on their feet. And that's all I have for you guys on this video. If you have not hit the subscribe button yet, please do so. Hit the like button, turn the notification bell on so you know when I post new videos, and I will catch you guys on the next one.